Okay, so you never know with a free event who's going to show up. We're expecting more. I've had a few people let me know they can't make it. So we'll go ahead and get started soon anyway. So nice to see familiar faces. Orla, Janine, Daniela, Mary, not all faces. Faces and names for me. So this webinar is part of a series I'm running, and it's a series on the inner game of confidence. So expect lots around mindset. And you probably know from the promotional stuff, this is all about our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves. So a really, really important topic, and a topic that's particularly important for me, both for my own personal development, I suppose, I got from this topic. I used to say that, one of the best things I took from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, when I learned that, was I learned how to get on with myself better. So this is really a really useful tool to get on with yourself better. And your relationship with you is probably the most important relationship in your life. And we all have a tendency to perhaps, not always be so kind and compassionate with ourselves. So it's very much about that tonight. But the rewards are great. I'm going to talk to you about that soon. So just keep an eye on the clock in case anyone else presents. I have some slides. Just before we get into it, just let me get the chat box going. So I love this hearing where you are. So if you can't come in to tell me, just put in the chat box where in the world you are. So I'm down in Laois, Ireland. And the last time we did this, we had America, we had UK, we had Ireland, we had Germany, we had, was it Luxembourg? And we had an Irish person in the Middle East. Lyme Regis, where is that? Is that UK, Marianne?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Meath and Daniela, that is a Dublin. Okay, so that's a Dublin today. And brilliant, okay. So, cool. Let me share the screen and put a bit of a structure. This actually, here's my, one moment, I got to open up my slides again. Okay, now go again. Hope you all can see my slideshow now.
Yeah.
And this is about, thank you, Marianne, it's about transforming your self-talk. So, yeah, as I said, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shane Pearson. A lot of you know me from becoming an experienced trainer of health and wellness coaches. I'm also, I would now call myself a transformational wellness coach. And before I even trained as a coach, I was working in something called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and it combined beautifully with coaching. Gives you a lot of linguistic skills and mindset techniques. So a lot of the techniques I share in the inner game of confidence are NLP related, if not fully from there. I also train as a nutritional therapist, so I have that badge. My coaching business is called Design Your Life Coaching. And I'm a winner of the Lifestyle Coach of the Year award in the Refute of Ireland for 3 years in a row. So that was very nice to get. And what to expect today. So we're going to learn more about the power of self-talk. For something we do inside our own heads, I can't really think of anything more fundamental to our experience than our self-talk. When we put meaning, so big picture thinking here is you don't see the way things are. You see the way things you don't see things how they are. You see things how you are. So it's perception, the ability to create a perception. We all have this amazing ability to filter reality. We have an experience and we run it through these unconscious filters and we give it a perception. We give it meaning, and from that meaning, it's the meaning we give our experience that has the impact on us, and then that creates memory, that creates experience, and that creates these rules, beliefs, values, etc., that we learn to live by. So self-talk is the kind of the means with which the minds make sense of things. So how we choose to talk about things or change that can be very powerful. So we have inside that self-talk, we have this thing called the inner critic. There's a famous book on this context called Taming the Inner Gremlin. So I sometimes refer to the inner critic as the inner gremlin. Great book, by the way, and I've recommended that to a lot of clients, which they've taken a lot from it. I have a copy here beside me. So this is about this webinar is about I've kind of tweaked a system. I've tweaked a 5-stage process, and I think the most powerful thing we can do is we can take control over that inner critic and transform it from the inner critic into your inner coach. Because we'll realize soon that this inner critic we all have, this inner gremlin that sometimes can be just a nasty old bugger, it's actually trying to help you. So we're going to learn about that and utilize that kind of knowledge to be able to reframe it and to tame it and to train it to become into more of a coach. So I love this story, and I shared it the last time I did the webinar, and it went down very well. So the Battle of the Two Wolves. This is a beautiful short story from the Native American traditions, one of the tribe. I'm not sure which tribe it came from, but the story goes that there's an old elder, and he's sitting by a campfire. Whoops, knocked my light. And he's looking into the fire, and he's got this worried look on his face. And his grandson comes up to him and says, "Well, grandfather, what's wrong?" And he says, "Oh, there's a great battle going on inside me." Son, "Oh," says the son, "wow." And he goes, "That battle is between two wolves. One of those wolves is an evil wolf, and he's the wolf of greed, of anger, of judgment, of blame, and all of the negative forces inside me. The other wolf is the white wolf, and that's the good wolf. And the good wolf is the wolf of loyalty, of courage, bravery, of compassion, empathy, and generosity, and all of the positive forces within me. And everybody else is also having this battle within." "Ooh," said the kid. So thought the kid. And after a while, he says, "And who's going to win, grandfather?" "Ah," he said, the wolf that I choose to feed." So this webinar really is about helping to tame that black wolf and train it, and really start to adopting more of the white wolf within. So I want to share a little bit of feedback with you all, because this is actually kind of I'm running the same theme this month, because last month my numbers were low. My recording didn't work, and the feedback was fantastic. And I know this is such a really transformative piece from the work that they do. So I know I'm going to run it again, and I didn't get it done before this month came along, so I'm running it now instead. So here's what I got from someone who attended the last webinar on the two wolves and this talk and the self-talk. Really wanted to thank you for today's webinar. I'm not exaggerating when I call it revolutionary. The Native American folk story you shared shed so much light on the truth that there are these two sides to us. We have our gifts and talents and virtues, but there is also the shadow. I hadn't dared to accept that until your talk today. I've already started to employ the 5-step process this morning, and it's been so helpful. So that's what we're going to learn today. Whenever I've made mistakes in the past, I felt abandoned in the sea of negativity, in part because I hadn't fully accepted this part of myself. But today was my script to first tell myself repeatedly, it's okay, then explain to myself how we're going to work it out, the situation from now on. So she says, this was gold. It's a shame that all the folks that joined last time didn't register. This was gold. So that's one of the prompts. Okay, let's run this webinar again, get the recording for those who couldn't make it live, and give others a chance who couldn't make it last time. So here we are. And we're talking about the inner critic. But a bit of a promise to you that if you use this, knowledge is only knowledge, wisdom is applied knowledge. So when we apply knowledge, we can get life experience and wisdom from it. That's what I'm really encouraging you all to do. So a little bit about this inner critic. So the inner critic, the inner gremlin, it's fear-based. It's really what it's trying to do is trying to protect you. Does anyone want to share? If you're on this call, you're probably aware of your inner critic, your negative self-talk. one time it tends to pop up first a different time. Sometimes some people get into a bad spot and it's kind of becomes a dominant voice. That's not a nice place to be, and it's kind of it needs a bit of a shakeup. Sometimes we're just fine. Inner critic's low, and then we try and push ourselves out. Like we try and start a new business. We try and go for a promotion. We try and put ourselves in a new situation, or we try and raise our game a little bit, or try and give up a bad habit or whatever. Boom, the inner critic often comes in then, and it really starts to affect you. And it's often, so at a subtle level, it's often plays a really important role in keeping you small, because small is safe. So if you feel like coming up, so when you go on trying to stretch yourself, oh, you can't do this. You're too young. You're too old. You don't know enough. You're not qualified. There's someone else knows a lot better than you. Why on earth would anyone show up for your webinar, Shane? Why on earth would anyone to listen to you? So think what kind, but how does your inner critic show up? We'll have a side that in a minute. So think about it. It tries to protect you. It's fighting for the status quo, because there's part of us, in our psyche, and it just fights for the status quo. It fights for things the way they are. There's another part that wants to be more, wants to grow, wants to develop and try new things and experience, and it wants to grow. Your spirit wants to grow, but the critic wants to keep it the same. So the critic is a powerful way that your psyche keeps you in check. It hates change. It resists growth. It doesn't want you to be any better, any bigger, any more successful. It just wants you to stay the same. But then there's a toxic inner critic. And that's one that's just highly critical, blamer, judging you. It's harsh and inconsiderate. It's low in empathy, low compassion. It tends to have this kind of superior attitude. Like, so let's let someone else in here. So it has this superior kind of attitude. It often, the inner critic, it often has kind of established itself somehow on an inner throne, and it thinks it can just talk to us in ways that put us down, make us feel small, without ever getting challenged. So a big part of today is learning, and this inner critic, and it's probably we all have an inner critic, if it's gotten out of hand or if it's not under control, it probably has been given free rein. It probably might have never been checked. So just get to know that inner critic is important. The first step in a lot of the change work I do in mindset is raising awareness. And to do that, raising your awareness now, what does your inner critic sound like? And I'd love if anybody wants to share by chat, what does your inner critic sound like? Oh, sorry, there is. Yeah, no, it's just just popping anything at all that your inner critic said. You can keep the private stuff out, but I actually is a very successful man. Mind Valley. What's his name again? He runs a huge business, and I just heard him on the talk yesterday. And he was talking about Instagram, and he only went in on Instagram a few years ago, and he was talking to Jay Shetty, and it was him who encouraged him to start. So he started, but he said, "I'm too old for this. I'm too old for social media. I can't start now." I had a similar story. I said, "Okay, not my thing." So the "you're too old" would be one. "You're not good enough. You're too procrastination. Thanks, regrets about." Oh yeah. Okay, so parenting one, whoa, especially mother. Whoa, they talk about the mother's guilt. I'm a terrible mom. My wife sometimes beats herself up a lot around those kind of things. So getting to know, the hot spots. You have your own hot spots. For someone it might be parenting, for someone it might be business, for someone it might be performance. What does your inner critic sound like? When I'm talking, a lot of my people I speak to, I spend a lot of time with coaches, and we tend to have done more work than most in this. But a lot of people haven't really tuned into that voice. It's playing around in the background. So a nice thing to start is just to keep becoming more aware of that. And how does it show up for you? When you can catch those negative dialogue, the negative statements inside your head, you're going to be going to put you in a place where you can do something about it. So how does it show up for you? Now, another question. How does it affect you? 3 a.m. Oh, nice point, Marianne. Did anybody else ever, people are staring and judging me. Does anyone else have that 3 a.m.? It's a hard mind to be with, your 3 a.m. mind, if you've been woken up and you've got a little bit of anxiety. Whatever a small thing was in your mind going to bed has now become a monster. One of my rules of thumb in coaching is to try and kill the monster when it's a baby. So if we don't, and we end up waking up at 3 a.m. and getting nods here from Marianne, yeah, inner critic can have a right old time. And it's powerful because all it has to do is to drop the slightest little thing in, and you get the fear. I had a good old, actually, before the last time I ran this webinar, I had a horrendous weekend where I had to work really, really hard on my self-talk. And a personal story about my inner critic. I originally kind of got introduced to kind of this concept when I trained in NLP, and I came home from my training, and I was really fascinated by the inner voice and the inner critic. And I was going to a fancy job, so I was back farming in the day. I was a full-time farmer back then, and I had my four-wheel motorbike, and I had a tray, and I put all my fencing gear, which was these nails and hammers and pliers and bits of everything. And I was driving along, very bumpy ground. Of course, I didn't strap it down. Boom, hit a pothole, bumps out. Then I was I was poking through grass to pull up my nails and my bits of missing tools, and wasting, already under pressure, wasting time, or now even more late. And the things I was saying to myself, there was like this voice in my ear going, chewing me out of it. Horrible stuff. And I had a beautiful moment where I just suddenly became aware of it. And I had learned how to deal with it the same way you will now. So the next time you catch yourself, armed with what you're going to learn today, rejoice the same way I still rejoiced in that moment, because that was the moment my inner critic became under my control. Now, we don't do it all. A lot of the stuff we do is unconscious, so it's an ongoing thing, but that was a moment of, wow. And there was the voice, and there was me. And I actually started to laugh. But, wow, I'm doing this to myself. So think about, how does your inner critic affect you? Is it holding you back? I have a message here. Inner critic tells me people are staring and judging me. So if your inner critic is, I'm not going, oh, what other people think. Oh boy, talk about stifling your creativity, your spontaneity, your self-expression, is when you're double guessing what everybody will think of your behavior before you do it. And then when you do it, you're second guessing what they thought of that behavior before you do the next one. It is a horrible place to be. It affects your response and perception of the world. And what does it cost you? We're also going to need, if you're going to tackle mindset, you're only going to be up against existing hardwiring. So what you would do repetitively becomes kind of hardwired in your brain. And anything hardwired, it can be unwired or rewired, but it's going to take repetition. So if you're not motivated, tackle this inner critic. It's interesting webinar, and in inner critic will go, yeah, whatever, and it'll get back to doing what it does best, keeping you small, keeping you down. So you got to kind of muster up, is this a problem for you? Maybe it's not, but how does it affect you? It kills productivity. It kills, if it's affecting your response and perception of the world, how so? How specifically is it holding you back? Or is it affecting you? It tends to be erosive. Missing opportunities, yeah. And then if you miss opportunities, it's regret. If you go for an opportunity and it doesn't work out, you have feedback. When you miss an opportunity, is what might have been. And an inner critic, it gets away with blue murder. If you had got that opportunity, now someone else got it, you should have done that. So it usually is quite unaccountable. So this is where we're going to bring into the webinar. Moving on, the impact it does have on your confidence. It tends to be really kind of a complete counterweight to your confidence. So is your, where's your confidence right now? Could it be higher? Is your inner critic keeping you in check? What about success? Has it held you back in the past? I spoke to someone recently in a call. Oh yeah, she's decided to enroll with me. And she turned down a dream job. And now she's going to go for it again. She determined it was the wrong choice, and now she's going to go for it again. And I highly commend her for that. Inner critics come in and they can start becoming our inner voice. In that case, this is important. Her inner critic, she was met then, and she started to go out into the world and look for the reassurance. And then her inner critic met other resistance in the external world, and she didn't go for it. And her gut is still telling her, "Oh, dream job, should have gone for it." So sometimes we have to ignore the noise, and sometimes we have to cut out this inner critic stuff. And sometimes we have to pay attention. We'll speak about that later. And well-being. So are you being well? Today, I had to turn my head around because we have a 2-year-old, she's not quite 2, a little one in the house, and she did not sleeping great. And there was a head colds in the house, and I wasn't in my best self. So I really had to careful with my inner talk and use what I know to turn it around. So well-being, if my inner critic was in control, I used to spend a lot of time up here beating myself up. That does not do anything for your well-being. And we now know your body chemistry changes just from your thoughts. And if your thoughts change to the positive, your language changes to the positive, your body feels that, and you just give yourself some happy drugs. Tommy Tiernan said he was an addict in his time, and he said that he's an Irish comedian. Tommy Tiernan says that he realized when he gave up drugs that there's a drug dealer inside his own head that he could get it. So really, self-talk and these feeling the white wolf is a bit like going to the pharmacy and getting the good drugs, completely safe, completely natural, and they're free. So your well-being and life, think about it as your inner critic affecting your life. If it's not affecting you in a big way, realize your motivation might be low to do it. But if you can see actually it's having an impact, it's usually subtle. You want to just see these things. Wow. We'll speak about at the end of this whether you want to know anything about it. So let's turn about the inner coach. We're going to transform that inner critic who we learned about into your inner coach. So there's going to be a really important step in the process, which is the reframe. So this is something I learned from NLP, and its pure goal is called a higher intention reframe. So to put it in context, every behavior has a positive higher intention. That's a supporting belief of NLP. Every behavior, so even this inner critic, even some of the nasty things you say to yourself, there's a positive higher intention behind it. Higher intention. You might say nothing positive about it at all, but there's a positive higher intention at an unconscious level. And this can take a little bit of exploration, because it's often you're not aware consciously, and you're not even if you go thinking about it, it has to come from what's called the unconscious. So your inner critic has a positive higher intention for everything it does. So what do you think is that positive higher intention? What do you think is the positive higher intention of you? Keep you safe. Good, Orla. Make you reflect. Yeah, you don't want to be too, perhaps. I would add in that it's a really good time to stop you being too impulsive. To say, for example, impulse buying. If we all had out into the world with the many things on offer, we might just buy all things and then stop and then regret. So it gives you time to reflect. It's kind of like I also say it keeps you a bit like the Irish. You never get too big for your boots in Ireland, because people are ready to talk you back down again if you start thinking you're a big shot. So it kind of keeps a cap on your enthusiasm, perhaps your self confidence. We don't want it becoming arrogance. So there is a role there for a kind of a counter to the positive forces. If everything was just positive, you might be blind to the negativity. So it often plays a role there in trying to make you aware of the negatives as well. So we'll talk about that. It usually wants you to do better next time. So that's the inner critic. So the positive intention of the inner critic, let's just say it's there to keep you safe, keep you small, because that's helped you survive. At the base level, you're at the basic level, you're built for survival, mind and body. Marianne, you said don't get that a minute ago. Was there something you couldn't understand that I said, or? Oh, sorry, I was wrong. Rob says helps us fit into social circles. So it does give you a kind of a counter. It's kind of an artificial. We do the psyche kind of creates this external aspect that kind of we can reflect upon. And what did I do? Was that a good thing to say? How could I be more friendly next time? So it has a value. Okay, yeah, okay, you're 3 a.m. critic. So and other times it has a positive higher intention, but sometimes the best thing is okay, you need to go to sleep. I need to go to sleep. You need to go away. And sometimes we need to work with it. So sometimes we need to turn that inner critic into an inner coach. Usually beyond the hours of 11 p.m. till 8 a.m. or 6 anyway. So the inner coach. So the inner coach is the attitude that wants you to do better next time. So it doesn't want to keep you small. It wants you to do better next time. It wants to protect you in the future by being more prepared. Hey, there was negativity in that, and let's spot that. There was areas there we could have done a lot better in. Let's learn from that so that the next time we're in an experience like this, we can do better. Yes, you had a relapse and you feel really bad. So we can accept the negative. Really, really, really important part of the negative, checking with the negative, checking or countering the negative critic is to work with the negative, not ignore it. Otherwise, it will bite you in the butt. If you try and live in a world of everything positive, and there's no negative, it will be a painful learning for you in the end. So it's better to accept the negative, but then to use positive psychology to try and turn it into something else. Learnings. What can you take from it? We can be tough. So the inner critic tends to be tough and harsh and not bloody useful. Whereas the inner coach can have compassion. A good coach can be very, very compassionate, but not collude or not critical. They can hold the vision. They can hold the potentials and they can be compassionate in the moment when a person hasn't got there yet, and still maintain that firm grip on the destination. So think of the coach as being compassionate, but not being not being kind of too soft on you either. It can be direct and show empathy, such as, I know that was really tough for you and you didn't prepare well for the event. So what can we learn from that? So very much about learning. A little bit of a case study on this, because this is something I use quite a lot in my coaching. And this guy, let's call him Mark. His name's not Mark. He's a really, really good guy. He's quite a young guy. He's in his early 20s. And I love the expression. I hadn't heard before. He said, "Oh man, my head is in the bin. My head is in the bin." So in the trash. He, despite being young, good looking, athletic, good, very sporty, is good job, intelligent, he was sad, depressed, isolating himself. His relationship was really suffering. Severe, crippling self-doubt, despite what would appear all of the things, to be at that age that would really stand to you. And there was a real lot. He was a love for sport. He'd lost his love for sport, but he was beating himself up big time with his inner critic. So we did different things. We worked for over 2 months, and he did a lot of work on the inner critic. And his focus tended to be on the negative rather than on the positive. So the inner critic will often spend so much time focusing on a little bit of negativity. One mistake you made about perfectionism, or that regretful thing you did last, or these things. So it often kind of just focuses a lot on a small bit of negativity and blows out of the water. What he learned to do was he learned to overcome setbacks with grace. Because when you get a setback, you may be bloody hard on yourself and beat yourself up and have a good old, I could go on for days or weeks, or some people can go longer than that. So he learned how to overcome his setbacks with grace. He adopted the growth mindset. Growth mindset is very important, and it is the kind of the attitude you need for the inner coach to get traction over the inner critic. This guy, he also had an injury back and forth, and he got over that. Despite leaving him very, very, very late, he still got back in the county team when at one stage he was giving up. Same guy, he had a lovely girlfriend. he made a decision. She was going to Australia. He went there to join her, and they were delighted about that. And that was after his team got to I think they got to the county final, and he learned to get on himself just like me. So the good news you're taking from all this so far, folks, is that the inner critic, what is it? It's your creation. It's inside you. You are in full control of it, even though you might feel like that. That's merely because it is an unconscious process that has not yet become conscious, which is why you're on this call. When it becomes conscious through awareness, you go, there's me beating myself up, like me on a motorbike on the quad, picking nails out of the poop and cow poop and grass, beating and giving gnarls. So, I became conscious. Now I was in control. It's my creation. And I could transform it. I could change it from this ear to this ear. I could give it a squeaky voice. I gave it a different accent. I changed the volume. I changed the speed. It was like, wow, it's under my control. It can be tamed and trained to become an effective ally. So that is a promise. But how? That's maybe the why, the what, and the how. We need to have time for the how. So let's move into the 5-step process. It's going to be recognize. Really, really important. I said earlier on, the foundational stuff here is to be able to have awareness. With awareness, we have choice. Without awareness, it's happening in our unconscious, and whatever the programs there are, they'll keep playing happily, whether it's unhappy or happy, it's happy to play the programs. So your inner critic at the moment is going to be running on his habitual thought patterns. And when you recognize it, you have the choice to change the record. And when to change your record, you refute it, because, like I said before, your inner critic tends to be unaccountable to anyone. He just sits there on some throne as if it's judge and juror, the authority, and has every right to condemn you or beat you up. Then when we can refute, we can replace it. I actually have a reframe here before replace. So we reframe and replace the negative with something useful. That's the inner coach. And then we rehearse that. And with that, rehearsal is really important, because I talked about those unconscious programs that you become aware of with conscious awareness. You can change it. When you rehearse what you want the new voice to be, when you rehearse the inner coach-like talk over and over and over, that becomes the new record that you play. That becomes a new program stored in your hard drive. And that becomes the new way in time that you respond to certain things. So then you can kind of leave it again and just keep it monitored, and the new self-talk becomes useful. So that is the goal. And that takes time, it takes repetition. But hey, you're going to be talking to yourself in your mind anyway. You might as well use it constructively, in my opinion. So let's focus on recognition. The first step is to recognize and become aware of your negative self-talk. Kind of did a mini exercise earlier on that, but nice thing to do is you're going to try and catch yourself in the moment. So just try and think about a previous challenge you've had recently, or maybe it was a big one and it wasn't recently, where you felt like it didn't go well and you beat yourself up a little bit afterwards, or maybe a lot. Just give yourself a moment to, what does this sound like? Can you get a sense of how you criticize yourself? Voice, you might get a sense of where the voice is coming from. Is it in front of you? Yes, to the side, up, down, left, right. Is it a slow voice, fast voice, loud voice, or a quiet voice? Be curious. Really want to recognize. You got to be really curious here. So you want to, and then critical thing I put in here is zero judgment. Absolutely critical to recognize your self-talk. You just recognize it. It's like, there it is. It's like watching the river flow, watching the water flow down the river. You're not judging it. You're not analyzing it. You're not interpreting it. You're just recognizing it. That is amazing. Next thing on for any kind of thing is like, you give yourself some metaphorical clap in the back. I just caught myself. I just recognized my inner critic because now I'm in control. That's the kind of attitude you want. It's like, okay. So pay attention to the self-talk. and the unhelpful thoughts that pop into your mind. And then you get to know when you're in the gremlin is speaking. So that's the idea of recognizing, being able to catch yourself in the moment going, ah. Now, second, when you've caught it, it tends to come out with some usually pretty harsh, outlandish criticisms of you. I'd love some examples to work with, but typical ones I deal with and meet with clients and myself. You'll never make it. Everyone, oh yeah, everyone thinks you are or everyone will think you're a failure. Anything at all here. When you recognize it, you've got a statement. So just great. I'd love to work with a statement and we'll try and refute it. If anyone has a common statement you want to share, put it in the chat box there. So my attitude when it comes to the refute, never based on facts. Good, okay, this is the fun we have, because all we're going to do is, okay, right, you're a critic, you have something important to say here. What is it? Okay, you're saying that I never do anything right. Okay, so my attitude is bring it to a court of law and or what they call in America, get lawyered up. Lawyer up and take him to the court of law, because his chance, if I don't do this perfectly, it's not worth doing it all. Beautiful statement from Rob, who obviously has a touch of perfectionism or knows someone who does. If I don't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing it all. And then I have a counter that done is better than perfect. That's my inner coach. So refute it. We could refute it. Okay, if you don't do it perfectly, is it not worth doing it all? We can bring it to a court of law. Is there any evidence to suggest that it is worth doing, even though it's not perfect? That's how you might be able to refute something like that. If it's never based on fact, if it's hearsay, you're rubbish, you're a failure, you're useless. What facts do you have to support that claim that I am a failure, that I'm a complete failure, or I'm useless? You say I'm useless. Okay, is there any look for the counter evidence? Are there, that you get your lawyers to go, well, is there any evidence to suggest I'm not useless? Well, it turns out that Shane actually has a lot of evidence that suggests he's not useless, because look, his shoelaces are done correctly. He's dressed. Look, he holds down a job. He's a self-employed. He's been running his own business for whatever many ever years. He's married. He's got kids. You know, what are your criteria for success? Now you've got it into a kind of a, it's like standing up to the bully. When you refute it, often it loses its, very quickly what happens is you start to dismantle the authority that the critic is coming at. Anybody getting that? Perfect doesn't exist. Nice counter. Yeah, so the inner coach can come in. Perfect doesn't really exist. Tell a perfectionist to settle for excellence. How about we just strive for excellence? You can inner coach this kind of stuff. Yeah, so when you're refuting it, you're able to just take that neutral stance. You're not going, I don't like you either. It's like, okay, let's take it seriously. Is this real? Is it evidence-based? And when it's not evidence-based, you kind of, at an unconscious level, you're breaking the legs off the structure that holds up this belief system or this authority that it has. Okay, so then we can reframe. So reframing, okay, here's a beautiful thing we can all do. I really want you to remember this. If everybody's got a free hand and a finger, I want you to try something with me. I want you to look up, if you hope you have a ceiling above you, imagine a clock on the ceiling, and I want you to follow the second hand as it's going round in circles. So it's clockwise. The minute hand or the circle. Now, I'm doing okay. So you keep that circle going. You got to do it with your hand. You can't do it with your mind. You imagine that finger It's still circling, it's still circling, it's still circling, and it's coming down. Now it's down below my eye level, okay? And if you're doing this too, your finger should be below your eye level, going in a circuit, and I'm looking at it. But hey, if I put a clock there, I'm going anti-clockwise. Weird, huh? So I'm going to keep the circle going the same way, still going the same way, still going. I'm going to put it above my eyes, and I got it up there. And now I'm going, wait a minute, it's clockwise. Clockwise, anti-clockwise. Wait, well, yet the circle isn't changing. It's perception. So in mindset, so much comes down to how we perceive things. So reframe is just basically our ability to choose a different way of looking at the same thing. So here's a lovely, again, it's from NLP. There is a precipice, a useful belief of NLP that there is no failure, only feedback. Lovely little, if you just adopt that as your belief system, there's no failure, only feedback. I talked about the growth mindset. This kind of stuff means that, you know, the inner critic will think of failure. The inner coach will go, there's only feedback. So all behavior has a positive intention, like we said. When we know what is the intention of the inner critic, is trying to keep you safe. Okay. So is there any other way you could keep me safe without, they're trying to keep me safe. So when actually you identify, let me just slow this down for a minute. This is really useful. It's called the higher intention reframe. So for the higher intention reframe, you have three main elements. You have the behavior itself. The behavior in this context we're talking about is the inner critic and what it's saying to you. What was the one Rob gave us? If it's not done perfectly, it's not worth doing at all. No procrastination leading there. So that's the behavior. So what is the intention of the behavior? The intention of the behavior might be to do everything perfectly so that we're successful. Okay, great intention. What are the consequences of the behavior? Well, the consequences is I'm procrastinating, or I'm not finishing it. I'm not getting anything finished, or I'm not doing it because I want it to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing at all. So I'm doing nothing. Okay. So the intention is for you to be successful, but the consequences are you're procrastinating, which you're doing nothing, and you're not being successful. Therefore, when you get to that kind of the discrepancy, a misalignment between intention, behavior, and results or consequences, the unconscious goes, oh yeah, you caught me out there. So when you can replay that back to your inner critic, okay, so you're beating me up, you're giving me a hard time, you're criticizing me, and your intention there is to keep me small, because keeping me small keeps me safe, and the intention of keeping me safe is to be happy. Okay, see. Well, here's the problem, is you beating me up, talking like that, it actually makes you feel crap. It makes you feel really low in confidence, and that prevents me from being more in the world. It prevents me from being happy. So thank you for trying to keep me safe and to be happy, but in this sense, you're not making me happy at all. So then you go, the higher intention is, okay, you're trying to make me happy. So what would make me really happy here was help me to learn from this negativity so I can do better next time. And then then you can change the behavior so that the intention stays the same, the results stay the same, but the behavior changes so it's aligned. And when your results are aligned with the behavior you're doing, and the behavior and results are aligned with the intention, you've got something beautiful going on there. So that's how you can work with your inner critic with the reframe. Intention, behavior, consequence. And then replace. It's just the fun stuff. Two things I would say here. You don't always have to do the mental work of going, okay, challenging the critic, getting the language, refuting the language, refuting the statement, and then changing it around. Sometimes what you're dealing with here, you have a program running, it's just your critic has become habitual, and it's just saying things. It just has all these things it can say to you, keep you down. What you can do there is what's a really useful advice is instead would be to have these prepared affirmations. statements, empowering statements of self. Why? Is because it's typically when you're stressed or anxious or a little bit uncomfortable about something that your inner critic comes into play. And that's a stressed mind. I just know working with a stressed mind or anxious mind, it needs to have something very, very simple. If you start thinking about it, your critic takes over again. You need it. So if you can just catch your inner critic and have like change your record, have the pre-prepared record ready to go. The pre-prepared record could be every day in every way I'm getting better and better. Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. You can even say like Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse. Even if you do nothing but jam or get a big bar and wrench the machinery of the habitual mind is going into the negative self-talk, that would be better. So replacing it, a simple way to do that would be have a powerful affirmation. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Or I love myself. I love and accept myself fully. I accept my flaws as well as my strengths. You might have just something like that ready to go. They're useful. And then you can create specific affirmations based on the common critics you come up against. I'll go to that statement in a minute, Rob. For example, if your inner critic says you're such a failure, replace it with, well, I've had setbacks, but I can learn and grow from them. So having a more tailored response to the critical voice is better in the long term. And then it's really important because if you think you're going to do this on the fly every time, you won't. You've got too many things going on in the day. So doing a bit of this kind of preparation work for this and having some affirmations ready or being aware of your inner critic's top 5 statements this week and working on those can be useful. Here's a nice statement from Rob. Rob's another coach. I have found it useful to ladder beliefs to neutral and then positive. Nice. Because it's hard for some people to go from negative immediately to positive. Yes. Getting to neutral is a much more sustainable approach. The critic rejects going from negative to positive. So nice, a lovely point here from Rob, and it reminds me of someone I'm working with at the moment. So it's totally right. And also in NLP, we talk about a mismatch between someone really, if you're in a down mood and you meet someone and they're like top form and and they're all positive and hey, what's up, Shane? What's up? And you're like, huh? The energy gap is too big, and you will actually repel each other. But if you're like Rob says, if you're just negative, harsh, negative, getting neutral is a nice first step. So breaking down the longer journey. So that can be nice and just in neutral, going, well, it is what it is. It go back to the perfectionist. I have to do it perfectly, or it's not worth doing at all. You just have to have a neutral one. Well, let's just do it anyway. And then move from there. Let's do it really well next time. So build up that ladder of positivity, you could say. Nice. Thank you, Rob. And then rehearse. So here is a little story on mental rehearsal. So the wonderful thing, actually, in the context of this, it's going to be most of it's going to be mental rehearsal anyway. So what we know about mental rehearsal in terms of performance, athletes now, if you go to the Olympians, some Olympians are spending more time visualizing themselves going through their competitive act than in their mind than they do actually either in the pool or on the sports pitch or in the training ground or in the gym, because and actually it's a nice story to back this up in the research. It was a study done with a famous study done with basically basketball. 3 different groups groups into 3. One group was going to practice shooting the hoop with the basketball every day for a few weeks. Another team were going to imagine themselves practicing for the same amount of time over the few weeks. And the third was the control, and didn't practice at all. Now, when they did test them by getting to go out and shoot hoop for real, turns out that the people who practice the most physically, who you'd imagine would have the best skill set, did second worst. The people who didn't practice at all did the worst. And the people who practiced mentally got the most shoots through the hoop. Why? Why on earth, or how on earth could you get better practicing something in your head than doing it for real? Now, you need a bit of both, but when you're that good, turns out when you're imagining yourself shooting a hoop every day, all of the hoops go in, all of the shots go in. When you're doing it physically, some of them bounce off. So they're kind of, and you can't delete them from your mind, or you can't delete that behavior. Yeah, so like Rob says, it blew his mind when he realized that the mind can't tell the difference between experience and mental rehearsal. Think of waking up from a nightmare. Ooh, sweat pouring off me, heart's going 90. I'm ready, I'm thinking my life's in danger. And I said, oh, all happens inside my mind. My body was having a full-blown response to that. So in the context of rehearsal is really useful because we can just hammer these affirmations in. We can visualizing. So I didn't include it here, but we can also visualize your inner critic. That's a nice thing to do for some people who are visual back there to recognize. They can visualize that inner critic. And then when you come to replace them, you can decide to maybe shoot them off, send them off, put them in a box and send them off to Australia if you want, and invite your inner coach. Or you could have them change, be the same thing. So visualizing new techniques, in this case, is usually kind of the mental rehearsal of the spoken word that you're going to say to yourself, to the affirmations. Reinforce the new, more positive mindset. So repetition, but you can do it anytime, anywhere. So very powerful. Don't underestimate just how powerful that rehearsal can be. Another case study. I'm not going to mention that lady. It's an interesting one. Just an emotional leader I worked with. A big thing is she said that food used to be constantly on my mind, whether I was in a good place or a bad place. A constant battle going on in my mind, in my head, not to give into it. So I work with emotional eaters and binge eaters, and a lot of them have a pretty harsh inner critic to work with. And she says later on, I'm now free of the negative hold it used to have on me. So this comes into lots of different work I do, great in confidence, success. I work with coaches and mentor coaches as well. And when you're becoming a coach, you're a full-time coach, whatever you have to step into a new identity. The imposter syndrome comes in. And when imposter syndrome comes in, so does the inner critic to tell us all about it. So now I want you to imagine, everybody, what your life would look like if you tame that inner critic that's having this kind of, what do you call it? It's like a lid. It's kind of keeping you a certain place. If you tame that inner critic and trained it to become your inner coach, an inner coach who was strong but compassionate, who was fair rather than harsh, and who was firm and direct, but allowed you to excavate your past in a way that you mind the negative and look for the good in it. How can you transform that negative thing into something good? What the good we can take from that? What can we learn from that? Become this coach. If that became your inner voice, or you had the ability to go, okay, that's actually making me lose confidence here. I'm going to transform this, make it useful. What impact would that have on your confidence? Confidence is just a secret sauce. When you've got it, things go well. When you've lost confidence, it's amazing. You start second guessing your own mind. You don't know maybe your own decisions. You think people are thinking things about you that they're not. What about success? Who here recognizes that your inner critic is just fine until you try and push the boat out, try to be a little bit more, try to be more successful, take on a new endeavor, or that the next phase in your growth comes out and it's waiting, but inner critic says, no, you're not ready, you can't do this, or just distracts you. What about well-being? I just love this work because you're going to spend the same amount of time with yourself anyway. What if you really learn to get on well with yourself? And also, people think that, oh no, the inner critic, it helps me to be a perfectionist or helps me to blah, blah. We're not taking anything away here. We're making it more effective. So what about the well-being if you're able to perform at a higher level, but enjoy it? A lot of high achievers have a really harsh inner critic and they don't get to enjoy the success in life. So well-being, being well, being able to enjoy your successes, being able to be more graceful with your failures, so that things don't fail. There is no failure, only feedback. With the things that don't work out the way you planned, being able to just gracefully accept them. What would that be like in your life? What would your life be like? What is possible? What would your life be like if you tamed that inner critic? Become your inner coach. So any questions at all? Tell me, or any feedback at all from today? I'd rather have a peaceful, positive with my inner. Yes, good. You deserve that. Well done, Marianne. We all deserve that. It's just the mind. My good friend said to me once, it's hard having a head. This is one of the reasons why. One of the big reasons why. So we all deserve and can so easily access, greater well-being, but we have to work for it. So if you feel free to drop a question in the chat box there, or come in with a question, just to give you a little bit more about me. If anybody wants to consider working with me one-to-one, coaching, I actually have just recently launched a low-cost monthly service, which kind of includes one session a month. Plus, I get to bring in some extra accountability and support and structure. So you can do a lot by yourself. So people who are able to, maybe for budget reasons, or they know they don't really need a full intensive transformational program. So I brought that in recently, a kind of an affordable monthly option. And then I have transformational programs, but I just book a call with me. Anything you think I might be able to help you with. I have my programs, but I also, try and tailor my coaching to serve your needs, whatever they may be. So the good news is that if you attend this event or got to recording, all you have to do is mention this event and you get 20% off any coaching package. Or even I'll do the same for a single coaching session as well. If you go for that monthly, I think the first month I'll give it off. Do you know someone who, and also, do you know someone who might benefit from working with me? So I work in working in coaching for over 15 years now. And some people, it's lovely to have a referral. I've a lot of experience and I've worked with both emotional eating, stress, and resilience, but really unusually the more serious stress, or not more serious, it's more serious stress, when stress is becoming a bigger problem, or it's kind of got to kind of quite level, or people are getting burned out from stress. And then I work with mentor coaches and they're helping in their personal and professional development. So I'm also going to give you follow-up this. I'm going to give you some discounts on some online courses that may be of interest, and kind of following a similar theme from this. So I'm going to share a link if you want to schedule a call. I'm going to share some discount codes for you for courses if you want. And if there's any way at all I can help, please let me know. So before we go, and thank you all for your time, let's just have no more slides. Who'd like to share some takeaways? What are you taking away from there? A really nice way to kind of summarize this is that, what's your takeaways? What are you bringing with you from the last hour of your time? I think we're on the hour. If anybody has to go in the hour, it's coming up to the hour anyway. You're welcome to just drop off. And thank you so much. I'll send the recording out. Thank you all of those who had some comments. Feeding the good wolf, lovely. You might as well. You're going to be feeding one of them, both hungry. And which one you choose to feed will win the battle. Anybody else got some take-homes? I think I see someone typing. That I can change my inner critic's voice. Yes. So you have that complete control. It won't have the control until it's in conscious awareness, and it won't, if you judge it or resist it, it'll have more power over you. Sneaky bugger. So it's by welcoming it, and the kind of reframes I did today The need to reframe. I like the concept of 5. Okay, thank you, Orla. Great. So taking that in, being curious. The first step, being curious. And then the higher intention reframe. What is it you're trying to do for me here, Mr. Inner Critic? It's not working. That's not working. You want me to be more, okay, now I get you. Now we understand what you're trying to do here. But let me help you. Let me coach you a bit. You coach your critic to be a better coach. And if there's a slide here, I'll send out the slides as well. There's some kind of typical coach-like language, which I think is the perfect antidote to the critic. Because we're about negativity, right about ignoring negativity. Thank you all so much for your time. I'll follow up with an email. We'll get the recording out with those special offers for you. Hope to see you on the next one. It's going to be a kind of a follow-on in the same series. It's going to be on affirmations, positive affirmations. So it's kind of skipping this part and just going straight into positive self-talk, which can be fantastic and be a brilliant way to start re-imprinting some new beliefs as well. So stay tuned. I'll let you all know if you're ready. I'll have your emails from this event anyway. Take care, and thank you so much for for joining me and for your contributions. I really, really appreciate it. It's so much better than talking to myself from here. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.